everybody, it's Matt DeWolf, Editor-in-Chief of Car Wash Magazine. Welcome to this episode of Car Wash Magazine Live. We are here in week 2 of our live streaming program, and just want to say thank you so much to everybody who viewed last week. It was a great audience. We reached more than 6,000 people. So thank you to everybody who shared it and who took part in this program. So just for anybody tuning in new today, this program is all about bringing this car wash community together. And we're going to do that through the power of a little entertainment, a little storytelling, and we're going to bring in some experts to talk about the things that are important to everybody right now. So that means that we are going to be talking for the foreseeable future about COVID-19, all things COVID related. So in the long term, we're going to switch that up a little bit. We'll talk about things that are interesting to car wash operators, and we're going to bring in some light and some levity and all of that. And as we progress even now, we will do some of that as well because we do need some levity. And so I've had a lot of time on my hands, sitting at home with my kids, and so I'm really trying to practice my dad jokes. And I thought, what better way to kind of bring a little light than to start doing some car wash dad jokes. So bear with me. It's first draft of these. I'm going to give you one. I invite you guys to submit yours as well. So here we go. What kind of pots and pans do car wash owners keep? Ceramic. Okay. All right. Well, we'll see how that one landed. Like I said, send me your jokes. We'll share them on future episodes. Let's move into current landscape. So since last week, we continue to see a lot of activity on the whole question of essential, non-essential businesses. We've seen some states go so far as to specifically include car washes in that list of essential, and others have gone the other way and have explicitly included car washes as non-essential. So there's still a lot going on in that space. I think that it's a little crazy right now. Obviously, this morning the unemployment numbers came out. It's up to 6.65 million, which is not awesome. But I think that there is some light at the end of this tunnel. So for me, I think in that week, we also saw the passage of the CARES Act, which is one of these 3 stimulus bills coming down the pipe for everybody. That bill has close to 900 pages in it, so it's about as clear as mud. So for today's show, we've got a couple experts. We've got an operator in Texas with us, and we're going to talk about a few key points of the CARES Act. We're going to talk families first, and we're going to share a good idea coming from our guest in Lubbock. So without any further delay, today with me, I'm going to bring my panel up for you here. Today with me is Joanna Johnson from Johnson Policy Associates, Claudia St. from Affinity HR, and Andrew Zamora from Racer Classic Car Wash in Lubbock, Texas. Hey, everybody. Helps if I unmute you guys, and then everybody can hear you. Hey, everybody.
Hi there. Hi there.
Great. I'm glad to have you guys on. Hey, why don't we start out with just giving everybody a little level set about who you guys are. Let's start with Claudia.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Claudia St. and I'm delighted to be here. I'm the president of Affinity HR Group, and we are the endorsed HR partner of the International Carwash Association, and do a lot of work with local car wash associations as well. And we normally, in good times, help owner operators of car washes with their employee challenges and hiring and really great stuff. And now we are all COVID all the time. So here to help with any resources you need when not only dealing with all of the federal laws that are coming out there, but unfortunately now, what to do when you are faced with a COVID infection and all of the things that go along with that. And really grateful to be here.
Great. Let's have Joanna. Why don't you go ahead and go next for us?
Great. Hi, everybody. Joanna Johnson. I'm president of Johnson Policy Associates, and I've been representing the automotive maintenance industry since 1991. We usually focus on many other things besides for disasters. But as Claudia said, in the last 3 weeks, it's pretty much been all disaster response, and our goal has been to keep everybody in business and in good shape and safe. And I'm very glad to be here to help in any way I can. there are, I think, a lot of positives here for your industry going forward. So it's important to talk about that too, especially in scary times.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there's been no scarier time, I think, at least for us, as what we're going through right now. But there is a lot of light. There's a lot of potential here. Let's Andrew. Why don't you give us a little bit of perspective about what you're seeing in Lubbock right now? What's going on in the car wash scene down there?
Hey, everybody. Before I start, I'm Andrew, president of Racer Classic Car Wash. We've been in business for about 10 years. You know, it's just so unprecedented to, you know, it just seems like every day something changes, you know, the world around us and what we're seeing. And what we're seeing here locally, we have about 18 tunnels in the city of about 300,000. We have witnessed 4 tunnels closing based on company decision. We ourselves and another company are still open. We have 2 full serve and 2 flex that are now completely all exterior. So we're only doing exterior washing. And we're seeing probably a 30 to 40% drop as far as we can tell so far. So it's going to be a challenging time, but we, you know, obviously want to keep everybody employed the best we can and keep moving forward.
Well, and yeah, I mean, I think one of the ways, hopefully, that we're going to be able to do that is with some of these, some of the bills that we have going on, right? So let's kind of get into it a little bit. I was talking to Joanna yesterday, and she made a comment that I thought was really interesting. That the Families First Act kind of came first, right? No pun intended. But so that came down, and then it was kind of scary for folks, and it was a little bit intimidating. And then now they've kind of followed that with the CARES Act, and so that's a secondary thing, and they're designed to work together. So Joanna, do you want to piggyback on that concept a little bit for me and just kind of go through what we were talking about there?
Sure thing. Yeah, I really wish that it had been possible to pass these 2 bills as a solid unit. Because when Families First came out, the aspects that were highlighted so much in the news, as just mentioned, seemed scary to people. But when you look at these laws together, what you see is Congress and the administration very much want everyone to stay in business. Everyone that has authority to stay in business, that is an essential business, they want you to stay in business. They want you to keep your employees on the payroll. They are extremely concerned about an inevitable recession. And so anybody that can stay in business is someone they want to help, okay? So I think it is helpful to go ahead and look at CARES Act first, and then you'll realize when Claudia fills you in on all the details from Families First that it's going to be doable for most people. Okay, so there's also one thing I want to mention about this, what is unique about the CARES Act that's a really good thing for everyone. If you were watching the news today or in the last couple of days, you may have noticed that we often look at what the European countries are doing because they're our closest parallel. And France, for instance, just outright is giving businesses money. There's no network about it. There's no program about it. What the CARES Act does is the closest we've ever been to giving people money so that they can stay open. So I want to highlight those 2 things from the Act in particular that are something I think a lot of people have been missing, and they are amazing. And by the way, I have notes because there are so many details here, and I'm going to make these notes available to Matt as soon as this is done. So if anybody wants a copy of exactly what I put together for this, you're welcome to have it.
That's great.
So the first thing is that I know you know about the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan, but now there's also a grant portion to that. So when you apply for one of those loans, you also ask for, the exact phrase is, an emergency advance. And you can get an emergency advance up to $10,000, and that's within 3 days. of application. And what is unique about this is that you don't have to pay that back for any reason.
Will you restate that for
And
everybody? Will you restate that? I
yeah.
think that's a really important point.
Yes. So when you apply for an SBA economic injury disaster loan, at the same time you ask for an emergency advance. You can ask up to $10,000 within 3 days of application. They give you access to that emergency advance. And that money does not need to be paid back for any reason. And the best information that I have today indicates that not paid back for any reason includes if you don't get the loan. And I also do want to, I do want to mention this up front, and everyone watching is probably aware, but I just have to say it, that everyone involved in trying to translate this information is working as fast as they can, and the landscape is changing a little bit day to day. So there may be nuances to this, and that's why I have to say when I'm talking to you and I say I've got the best information I have as of today says this.
Right.
That means that is the consensus, okay? But it's a really good deal. Okay, so there's that one aspect, and we can also come back to disaster loans, but I just want to highlight these monetary incentives that have not existed before.
Okay.
Another aspect of CARE is the Paycheck Protection Program, and it allows up to 8 weeks of payroll covered and other expenses. And that loan, that part of the loan will be forgiven completely, so long as everyone is staying employed. So there's what I would call a bureaucratic process involved in this, but this is the closest to giving people money as it gets to keep your folks employed and to stay running. It's pretty amazing.
How does
that they're doing this?
Yeah, I mean, how does that, Andrew? How does that square up with what you've been looking at from the operator's perspective? I mean, I know that when we spoke last, you were exploring all of this stuff, right?
I've got the application right here.
There it is.
Yeah.
We've all got ours.
It's exactly like Jill just stated. There's really not a lot of hoops you have to jump through. It's very, it's pretty simple. And again, it's free money, and you almost can't not do it, right? And so we contacted several banks, and they're all on board. We literally are about to submit ours. Our CFO has done a great job of preparing all of our information, which really wasn't a whole lot. And when you think of, whatever size your company is, a month and a half of payroll, or 2.5, I guess, or 8 weeks, I guess, that's substantial. And it'll definitely go a long way with us for sure. I'm pleased that they've made it as simple as it is.
Yeah, it's normally not, right? I mean, normally this is not an easy process.
Typically, no.
Claudia, let's back up a little bit and let's go through kind of these things in order, right? Let's go through a little bit of if I'm a small business owner, I'm a car wash operator. What do I need to know? What do I need to be paying attention to with relation to families first, especially families first?
Sure. Just one note on the CARES Act and the payroll protection. It is from what I can tell, it's very easy. And I would talk to definitely Joanna if you can. I've been getting a lot of these questions about the CARES Act and this particular piece of it, the Payroll Protection Act. Your best source of information is going to be your local banker, because they're the ones that are administering. So they're the ones that are going to need to know what documentation you need. They're going to need to know how you do those calculations. There are different options about whether you're basing it on 2019 payroll or year to date or first quarter. Or there's just a lot of, it's simple, but there are some questions in it. And every time I look at it, I have another question. So your best source of information for that is going to be your local banker, but have patience, because I know in contacting my local banker when I was filling this out, they didn't have a lot of information. This was passed last Friday, and I started fielding questions on Monday, and nobody works that fast. So as Joanna said, we're kind of digesting this, and it is sort of a moment to date thing. So that's your best bet. And the other thing I would recommend is that you get on it early. There are just a certain number of funds that are set aside for these programs, and so when that money is donated or put out there, that's it. So if you're going to use it, and I would absolutely recommend that everybody check out whether they can apply for it. I would recommend that they do it, and do it fairly soon, but also have patience on your poor bankers.
Yeah, they're busy too, right?
They're really busy, yeah. And that it's. I had a funny exchange with my bankers saying, thanks for doing all of this, because I know you have absolutely no desire to do any of this. They've just been put in this position, and a lot of folks have a lot of sense of urgency around it. So that's my 2 cents.
Real quick before you jump in, I want to be proactive with the questions for folks that are coming in. Can we just restate the name of the loan that they need to be applying for that we're just talking about?
Sure. Well, there are, as Joanna was saying, there are a couple of loans in it. There's the emergency disaster relief loan, or expanded disaster loan, and she wants you to specifically say it's the emergency advance. Is that right, Joanna?
So emergency advance. They're looking for the emergency advance.
And that's for that $10,000, like just cash.
Yep.
The other one that we're talking about here is the Paycheck Protection Loan, and that is specifically covers 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. And that's a loan that they calculated on payroll, and you get that. And as long as you don't reduce your wage rate or your head count, that loan will be within 8 weeks of getting that money. Once you get that money, once that loan originates, as long as you don't reduce your head count or your pay rate from that point, that loan will be forgiven. That's the Paycheck Protection Loan.
It's kind of a mouthful, isn't it?
They're all mouthfuls. Yeah. And unfortunately, these don't, well, CARES is nice. I can't even remember what CARES stands for, but the Family First Coronavirus Response Act is FERCRA. So that doesn't help. It doesn't roll off the tongue either. We need better acronyms.
Yeah, that was not, whoever named that one was not a marketer.
Yeah, get on the acronym, please. Yeah.
That's funny. That's funny.
Oh, can I mention one thing just real quick?
Yeah,
Can
absolutely.
I just add something real quick about the emergency advance? Just to make it more fun, this is also sometimes referred to as a grant. Mm. So we have to know all our terms to play this game effectively. Okay, so it's the economic injury disaster loan. You ask for the emergency advance, but it is also sometimes referred to as a grant. So again, everyone you're going to be talking to is playing catch up here. So you just want to know all your terms.
So say both.
And I'm going to actually ask Joanna a question, and I do not intend to be putting you on the spot because I don't have this answer at all. And the one thing I would say to everybody also, this CARES Act, which has the Paycheck Protection Act, there are tons of buckets of money in here. We're just touching on a few of them. There's way more. Yep. So you should be sitting with your CFO and your banker to figure out all of these different things, because it's also my understanding that if you apply to one, you're not necessarily eligible for the other. So again, there's lots of different pieces in this, and one of them is the refundable employee retention credit. That's a different credit or grant, I'm not quite sure, that's eligible for employers who have fewer than 500, but also more than 500. Most of the stuff that we're talking about today applies to businesses that have fewer than 500 employees. So that also goes for those that have more than 500 employees, and it's a grant, as far as I understand, that you can apply for a grant back on wages, up to $10,000 on wages, and you will get back 50% of those wages. So basically $5,000 per employee. So it's 50% on wages of up to $10,000. And this is for companies that can demonstrate some financial hardship. Smaller businesses, the financial hardship threshold is smaller than those for larger businesses, but this is separate than the Paycheck Protection Act. So if you've already had to lay off a lot of people, this might be a better option. I'm not quite sure why one would be a better option than the other, but this is a whole different piece of the CARES Act that is, again, cash back to businesses up to $5,000 per employee.
Yep. Can I add to that, Matt?
Yeah.
Real quick.
Yep.
Oh, everything Claudia was just talking about. I have in my notes that you're all going to have access to. I have the link right to the IRS FAQs on this exact subject of how it works, okay. And everything Claudia has been saying about this is going to be a dance with you and your CFO, another CPA if you use one, and your banker. And everybody gets together and you figure out what's going to be good for you. There's more in here. I mean, I have a list of all the different things that are in here. And the thing is, you do apply for all of them separately. And what's fascinating is that most people that are eligible for one are going to be eligible for all of it. And really the tweak is on the payroll credit. That's the one that's a little different, which Claudia was just explaining, and is really designed, I think, to maximize the support for larger employees, larger employers with lots of employees. But all the rest of these things that we're talking about today, you can do them simultaneously. And the only caveat is that they can't cover the exact same thing. Okay. So that's how it works. It's like you're going to have a Venn diagram.
And there's one other question that I read was that if you do the Paycheck Protection Loan and you take, I think it's the emergency advance, that may impact what percentage of that loan is forgivable. So I'm not quite, I'm an HR person. I cannot even do math. So I should not be in a position to be reporting on this at all. The only reason why I'm here is because I read the stupid thing. So but do you know how those two relate in terms of affecting the forgivability of that loan?
Yes, it is the easiest rule, if we want to try to have a rule for how to conceive of how these things work together, is really what I said a minute ago, that most of these can be used simultaneously, but you just can't cover the exact same cost. Okay, so the amount, the 8 weeks that's covered by payroll protection, that cannot be paid for twice by a different program. Mm-hmm. But then again, the payroll protection is only hitting 8 weeks, right? And you may need more coverage on payroll than that, and that's where all the other things come in. So this is going to be a quilt is maybe a better way to look at this. This is going to be a quilt, okay? You'll have all your list of description of all your costs and all different things, and one thing is going to pay for this chunk over here, and another thing is going to pay for this chunk over here, and the goal is for your whole quilt to be covered. Does that make sense?
So let's stay with the quilt analogy a little bit. Can my quilt come together if I've furloughed my employees, and what does that mean for me?
I'll take it just a little shot at furlough. We had this talk just 2 days ago, Claudia and I. So furlough is not a magic word. A lot of people have been asking about what's the difference between laid off and furloughed and fired. And the best way that I can find so far, including going back and checking the Department of Labor discussions about this and their guidance documents and things, is that furlough, when they're talking about it, they mean you still are maintaining an employment relationship with the employee. So the employee is getting something. So it could be some pay, it could be some continued benefits, but that's distinct from when you're laid off or fired for these concepts. That's like at a point where it's severed, the relationship is severed. You can always rehire people, but I just mean for these plans. You could rehire them, but they're more likely, if they had health benefits, to have to apply for COBRA at that point. that's as far as I would go on that subject, because we have the expert here on that. But I just wanted to mention that there isn't, when it sounds sometimes like we're dancing around that term, it's only because it's not specified the way terms tend to be in roles.
Absolutely. And I, on that point, if, as it relates to the CARES Act, as far as I understand, a lot of companies at this point have already had to make those decisions about furloughing, if that's a thing, versus laying off. And most employers that I have seen, they're laying off, which means they're severing that relationship. Those employees are now eligible for some form of unemployment benefits. That's generally what it looks like. So it's, but maybe they're maintaining their PTO accruals or their seniority or what other benefits that they would get as a result of longevity working for the employer. When they come back, they're not going to have to wait, have another waiting period for health insurance, or another, you know, having to start the accrual clock again in order to build up vacation. But a lot of employers have already reduced their head count. And so what the Paycheck Protection Act offers is, if you've already reduced your payroll, and as a result of getting the Paycheck Protection loan, you can then hire them back. And so the intent is, if you bring your head count back up, you can have that loan forgiven. So it's still, to me, a little bit gray as to whether or not, if I had 100 employees, I laid off 50 of them, and I take out that Paycheck Protection, as long as I don't reduce any more of those 50 remaining, I can get it forgiven? Or do I bring back the original 50 that I laid off because of coronavirus? Is that 50, is that layoff and then rehire sufficient? It would be sufficient to warrant forgiveness of the loan, but I don't know if you just keep them at that laid off 50 and you keep the rest of those 50 people there, is it sufficient for the forgiveness? So Joanna, I don't know if you have an answer on that.
Yeah, we're still working on that, exactly how that's going to play out. But I really want to emphasize for everybody that the goal of this package is to keep people in business and to keep people employed. So while, yes, there is an impact on what you can get in some of these programs, depending on, you know, whether or not you've kept your workforce intact or can bring them back, I believe that the implementation of this will be focused on whatever helps responsible employers stay in business. I think that if they were going to err on one side or the other, they're going to err on that side. And also, one thing I just want to mention quickly, because I know our time is limited and I don't want to forget this, I didn't get it in edgewise before. When we were talking about the fact that you have to apply to all of these things separately or get involved with them separately, if you think you might want to do this after you've consulted with all of your people that you need to talk to, please do get on it fast. It's not just because the money will run out, but because the way these programs are used now immediately signals to Congress what else they need to do. Because they're not done helping. They are working on the next package now. It's inevitable that they're going to work on another package. So how we behave with the programs that we've already been given tells them, oh, you know, like if everybody's maximizing, for instance, the payroll protection plan, they're going to be like, we are probably going to have to re-up that, you know, here and here and here. I expect that one to be re-upped, as a matter of fact, because once they've created the mechanism, much easier to just say, okay, more of that, than to create something from scratch.
And Matt, if I can just add one other quick thing, and then I think I've tapped out my knowledge on the CARES Act, so I've probably gotten everything that I have to say about it, and call your banker. But I have been talking with businesses. Those folks who are still keeping their businesses open tend to be those businesses that have been considered essential businesses. And one of the things that they're struggling with is a lot of those employees don't want to come to work because they're afraid, or because their family members are afraid that they're going off to work. So this is also an opportunity. Those businesses may not have seen a big reduction. I mean, most companies have seen significant reductions in revenue and contract work, but some healthcare providers, you know, janitors in the, you know, healthcare sector, they're hiring. So they're getting these grants, and the question is, what do we use them for? So if you're still operating and you're still open, you can take this money and turn around and give it back to your employees as some form of hazard pay, as an incentive to keep them engaged, because there's a lot, you're getting this money anyway. What are you going to do with it if you're already getting revenue to cover your payroll? If you can already cover payroll, now you have this windfall. It's a great time for you to be creative about how you can establish incentive programs and engagement programs to keep your employees engaged, recognizing that they're terrified. We're all terrified. Everybody is afraid, and they're afraid if they're at home and have no work. They're afraid of that financial consequence, and they're afraid if they have to go to work of getting sick. So nobody's happy right now. Nobody's sitting around saying, I got this. Nobody does. So using that money to buffer that a little bit is a great opportunity.
Andrew, that's a perfect segue. What are you going to do with it? How are you kind of going about this, and what's your kind of process for how you're going to use those funds?
Well, I mean, we'll determine which direction we go with it. But when I started, if any size of company will just think about what their monthly payroll is times 2.5, right? It's huge. Again, no matter what size of company you are. So as far as, really what we're going to do with it, I mean, it'll go towards the business. It'll go towards improvements or towards, employees themselves. Claudia touched on something there that's been a little touchy lately, and that was essential business and what determines that. Our industry, I guess you could say, if you want to call it lucky, was lucky enough to fall under a type of an essential business. Now, people look at it different ways. I think companies have to decide, if they choose to stay open, if they don't, who's at risk, who they want to put at risk. We kind of determined that, our employees certainly wanted to stay employed. And we don't have any more interaction than, say, a drive-through window would, if that. Most of the time, they don't even roll down the windows. So we felt pretty good about that. So, it's been a kind of a trial, decision-making 7 to 10 days. Are we going to be open? Are we not? What are we going to do? What's the state going to do? What's the city going to do? And pretty much our industry fell into, I don't know the exact number, but I would think that the majority of car washes are open nationwide, and somebody online may have better information than that, than I do. But, as far as like I said, where we are, there's only 4 that are closed. And that was due to a company choice. And so that's kind of where we sit with it. We have just applying for it. We haven't even thought of what we'd actually do with it, but it'll definitely help for sure. Because
when you're trying to figure that out, you give me a call. I got lots of ways for you to spend that on your employees.
Well, I'm just tracking the numbers now, because as you can see, I'm outside, and it's going to be like 82 degrees here. So it's a Thursday, and typically going into a really nice weekend, what you're going to wash. And so I'm watching the volume really close right now, and we are below what we would typically be, obviously. So I'm sure that it'll go towards, subsidizing the loss of volume. So,
Andrew, have you been watching at all the new sick leave law? Are you concerned with that? How are you handling that?
I'm sorry?
The new sick leave law, they just enacted on April 1st. Have you seen that?
I haven't.
Claudia, you or Joanna may be able to speak more specifically to it.
I'd be happy to speak to that. Just following up on one thing, one of the provisions of the Paycheck Protection Act are that 75% of the proceeds that you do have to go back toward pay. No, is that right, Joanna? So
yeah, it's good to keep in mind that all of these things do have requirements about what you can cover.
Yeah.
So there is that.
Yeah.
Not a pony. Not a pony. Can't get a pony.
But we always wanted the pony.
I don't want a pony. the Paycheck Protect, or the, I'm sorry, where are we? The Families First Coronavirus Response Act went into effect yesterday. So basically every business of fewer than 500 employees are now required to provide protections under this act. And there are 3 different pieces to it. One is a sick leave. So anybody from now on, not in March, but effective April 1st, if you have an employee who gets sick, who is suspected of being sick, tested for, confirmed as having coronavirus. So basically demonstrating all of the symptoms, being told by a healthcare provider or government official to stay home because you are sick with coronavirus or what could be coronavirus. You are eligible for 10 days of sick pay at full pay if you're full-time, and if you're part-time, you would get what your normal pay would be as a part-time employee. If you are home taking care of somebody who has coronavirus or is considered to have coronavirus, or if you're at home taking care of a child who's not in school or in daycare right now, then you can also, for sick leave for 10 days, receive up to 2/3 of your pay for those 10 days. Up to maximums, full-time, it's a maximum of $511 for those who are home with their taking care of their children or taking care of a sick loved one. It's up to $200 a day. That's the sick leave portion. That's 10 days. After that, if you are taking care of a child who is no longer in school or daycare, you are then eligible for another 10 weeks, for a total of 12 weeks if you add the sick leave part to it, but an additional 10 weeks of getting 2/3 of your pay up to $200 a day if you are home with a child and cannot work from home. If you can't do your job from home and you're home with a child, you're eligible for another 2 weeks pay. And that is also, you can take that leave intermittently. So if you and your spouse can share that child care, if you've got, a babysitter who can take a part of that, you are eligible for that. All of that money is reimbursed by the federal government. And the way it's reimbursed is you deduct what you would normally pay in payroll taxes. So your FICA, your Social Security taxes that you would normally pay as your normal taxes, you subtract from that amount the amount that you've paid out in this benefit. So it's fully reimbursable. And this is why what Joanna was saying is right. That emergency cash loan can also be for those who have to pre-fund this amount and they would normally not be able to do it. So all of these things kind of work together to offer this benefit to employees and then give you the money to help you do it. And then you can subtract it from your taxes. So they're really working to get you covered. But in essence, it's really a limited number of people. If you're sick with coronavirus past 10 days, or you're quarantined for 10 days because you have been exposed, and then you get sick, you're still only covered for those 10 days. You're not covered that extra family leave. That's only for people who are home with children. And then one other point on it, and then I will be quiet. A lot of people were wondering with these state stay in place requirements, whether those, if you were in a stay in place requirement, whether that would qualify you for this leave, either the sick leave or the family leave, because you're quarantined, but you're not actually quarantined. Those are state and local directives that are not covered under this. You are only considered quarantined if a doctor or a healthcare provider says you need to stay at home because you are either sick or likely to be sick and could be considered infectious. Or if your doctor, and this is also gray, we're not quite sure, but if your doctor says you will die if you leave your house, you need to stay home, that may be considered under this, but these state directives are not covered under either of these leaves, either the sick leave or the family.
So does, okay, so let's come back to that in just a second.
Sure.
I want to, with the sick leave, does that have any impact on furloughed employees? Like, is there
anybody who's not working for you, anybody who's laid off, anybody who's no longer on your payroll, they're not eligible for this. And if you are, let's say you reduce the hours from 40 hours to 20 hours a week, your pay is based on that 20 hours a week. You can't use this amount to add back up to 40 hours. So wherever you are is what your benefit is. If you're laid off, you are not covered. If you are at halftime, you get halftime coverage. Now the employer, and I keep using this expression, bubblegum and rubber bands, the employer can patch together through PTO or emergency PTO, or maybe with some of this grant money, they can cobble together a way to keep people financially whole. But the act itself, you will only be reimbursed what the act covers, and the act does not cover people on furlough, and it does not cover any amount above what their normal rate of pay is when they get sick.
Okay, that's really helpful, I think, because I think that a lot of operators are trying to figure out. I mean, some of them have already furloughed, some of them have already laid off, and so navigating all of this and trying to figure out what in the world am I doing is going to be pretty complex. Are there any other situations where, if I've made some of those decisions, I'm just not eligible, but especially in some of this with the states where we're getting the stay-at-home orders, outside of the sick leave stuff, are there any of these emergency loans, paycheck protection loans? Do I lose any eligibility on that front if my state has told me I have to, close?
Well, I'm going to let Joanna answer that, but there's one piece that I do want to add is that the CARES Act does one major thing, which is it has expanded unemployment benefits that you are eligible. So if you've laid your employees off, they're now eligible within your state, and they still have to satisfy the state requirements for eligibility. So if they just quit or if they stole from you, they might not be eligible. But as long as they satisfy the state eligibility for unemployment benefits, if the state has a maximum, so for example, New York State has a maximum of $504 is our maximum benefit that you can get on a weekly basis from unemployment. The federal government in this act has just plunked another $600 onto every weekly maximum, regardless of your state. So even if you're not getting the state maximum, let's say you're eligible in New York for only $200 a week, you would get that $200 a week and then the additional $600. They're essentially adding $15 an hour to your weekly maximum benefit. Everybody gets $600 regardless of pay. So in many instances, these folks are now going to get more money than they would normally get just being fully employed. So while there's no other protection for folks who are laid off other than unemployment just got way different, way better. Only for 4 months, so this is a limited time. They've also expanded unemployment. It's about 26 weeks nationally on average. Again, these are state-by-state programs. They've added another 13 weeks, so now it's 39 weeks of availability. But that's a big piece. But I'll let Joanna answer the question about if you furloughed or closed down, whether these you're still available for them.
No, but that's such great information, Claudia. And okay, payroll protection doesn't apply if you don't have anybody on payroll. So that's one issue.
And as of now, right? As of now, if I go hire somebody, then am I eligible?
Yeah, there's a window.
Okay.
Actually, yeah, there's a window. It's this goes to harm that is documented between February 15th and June 30th. Okay, you had to be in business on or before February 15th. And then the window is from then until June 30th. So it's come up in this discussion already that there are going to be a lot of combinations of how this happens, like how this goes down and when you apply and all of that. That's why, again, it's going to be so important to have your discussions with the professionals that you need to talk to. Bankers, CPA.
One thing on the payroll protection, though, is it does cover sole proprietors. It actually covers independent contractors. They're not eligible to apply yet, but even if you have no employees, if you're a company that has one, if you are a company of one, if you're an LLC or an independent contractor, and you have your own company, you can apply for this, and it's essentially 2.5 times your own pay, is what it looks like.
Have you guys seen
true.
any? Sorry, have you guys seen any
I was just gonna
specifics
say, I
around the
didn't
timing? Like I know the you can apply for the payroll protection tomorrow, right? Is that an accurate statement? Tomorrow, April 3rd?
And independent contractors and sole proprietors, gig employees can apply starting the 8th.
The 8th, okay. Is it like, do you guys know? You may not know this answer. If not, I'll find it for everybody. But whether or not there's a specific time that it all opens up, you know, does the unicorn sprinkle rain and magically we can apply at 8 a.m. or, you know, do we have any information on that?
You should talk to your bank.
Yeah, there we
You'll
go.
figure
There
out
we
they
go.
don't know what the heck is going on. They're like, don't call me, I'll email you.
Yeah.
I mean, officially tomorrow they will start accepting applications, but the 3 that I've talked to today.
Okay. Joanna, sorry, go ahead. I had cut you off.
No, it's okay. There's most of the things in here are to cover you like a disaster. I mean, like a disaster situation. I mean, there's one that's actually called a disaster loan, but I mean, the idea is that you are being interrupted in some way. Okay, you're being interfered with or stopped from having your normal level of business. So if you have to furlough, if you've already done it, or you had to furlough a bunch of people, you still get business coverage. But again, the whole point is to keep your business a going concern. They want you to stay in business. They want you to be in business when the crisis is over. They want you to stay in business through it if you can, preferably, but they want you to be there when it's over. So just think of all of these different options that way. And you want me to go ahead and just list some of the others?
Yeah,
here?
please. Yeah,
because there's a pile of things here. Okay. So there's so many I can't memorize them.
No.
So
I've got my pen ready. I'm going to write them down because I probably don't.
Oh, you don't have to write it down because you can have these notes. You can just have it when I'm done. Okay, so there are also other factors in here. There's the employee retention tax credits. There are, and ICA specifically asked about this one. There are SBA Express loans. Mm-hmm. There are more than just the SBA Express loans. Okay, there's a scroll of different loans that you can get now. And again, you can do these things at the same time. You just have to have it set up in such a way that it's not paying for the exact same expense. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So there's also the net operating loss modifications.
Yep.
The very unpopular changes that were made by the 2017 law. And I'm actually going to read this to you because this is one I don't do every day. And I want to make sure that I say it really accurately for you. So the 2017 tax cuts law prohibited carrying net operating losses backward to prior tax years. That would be, people are very unhappy about that. And it also limited carrying forward net operating losses to offset only 80%. Okay, so that's been suspended and you're going to be able to go backwards, and that's going to include 2020, 2019, 2018. And you can also, any remaining net losses can be carried forward indefinitely. So that is a good thing for everybody. Oh, and instead of 80%, it's 100%. So that's it. That can all add up. Again, when you look at this as a package deal of all the different things that you can do, they're hoping for a way that to spread it all out and get you covered one way or another.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely going to require, again, some quality time with your CPA. I also did just want to mention, because a lot of people do ask, there is also the recovery rebate issue, that those recovery rebates are going out. So there's money there too. And part of this, I want to mention in conjunction again with the improvement to the unemployment benefits.
Mm-hmm.
The design here is to keep as much of the marketplace functioning as possible. So the fact that people are getting more on unemployment benefits than is their literal amount that they would get under a normal state-run program 6 months ago. The idea is that if they're not in like starvation mode, they will participate in the economy, because we're trying to get people to participate as much as possible to keep things rolling.
Yeah, but I mean, bottom line of all of this is that it's all meant to keep us keep us whole and keep us able to come out the other side once this all does go away, right?
Yeah, right.
So we're covering a lot of great stuff. I do want to move into a great idea that Andrew had with his wash. All of these resources for everybody, they're going to be available at carwash.org/sharing, and I'll put that link up for you guys later. And we'll just keep this conversation going in that way. But Andrew, I want to go towards this idea that you had at your wash. I'm actually going to play a video for folks first, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it. So hang with us.
The Lubbock community has always been proud to support each other and our local businesses.
You know, you always hear the idea here in Lubbock, you're lucky to live in Lubbock, and we're lucky to live in Lubbock.
The local businesses are the ones that help build the Lubbock economy, and we're going to be the ones to help rebuild it when we're all through with this.
This spring, Racer Classic Car Wash is supporting our neighboring businesses by purchasing 35,000 gift cards from local restaurants across Lubbock.
You know, we've got business partners and other businesses around town that support each other. And with Racer Classic Car Wash, and the principals of that business called me and said, hey, we'd like to be a part of this. And I was like, you bet, we'd love to do it.
This program that Racer Car Wash is doing is huge for us. The locals are really struggling right now. Everybody's struggling, so we need all the help we can get. They've gone out of their way to buy all these gift cards and help us, which also helps their business. It's huge. It's just a great way for us to partner as local business people.
During this difficult time, let's race together toward a successful future for Lubbock.
All right, so that was an awesome little highlight of the Race Together program that you guys are doing, Andrew. Can you tell us all a little bit about how that came to fruition and where that came from?
So I guess it was weekend before last. I had one of our investors call me and just, we were talking about what was going on, and he said, hey, I got an idea. What do you think of this? And he said, what if we buy some gift cards to local restaurants and pass them out to our customers? And so we kind of kicked it around for a couple of days, and there was a lot of interest, obviously, from local owners, and we ended up with, I think, 8 or 10 local restaurants. And we purchased in excess of 35,000 gift cards, and we tried to keep the gift cards at a low amount so that they could actually go in and spend money, obviously, with the restaurants. And then Washmore Media, who does our marketing for us, came up with this video. So we'll do that. We'll run that on social media and also run it as a commercial here locally. But the idea was not to promote ourselves per se. It was more to kind of bring us together as local business owners, and it really accomplished it. The response we got back was just, I got another email this morning from a principal of one of the restaurants, and they were just, went on and on of what it meant to them. And so that's kind of, that was our take on it. That's the direction we wanted to go with it. And it's worked really well. We have a bunch more to give out. We'll probably give them out for the next 2 to 3 weeks, I would imagine. And we're doing them at all 7 stores. So it's been fun to do, and it's been fun to work with everybody for sure.
Well, and talk about a way to, there's a couple of reasons you do a thing like that, right? One is it's good for the community. First and foremost, at this time when everybody needs support and needs lifted up, you got to be there for each other. And so on that regard, awesome job. That's really cool. But guess what? There's a side benefit of that whole thing that comes with a really positive PR lift, right? I mean, it's going to be awfully hard for people to come by and think ill of you running your business when you're putting so much back into your community. So yeah, I mean, I think that's great.
Yep. Yeah, we've seen that as well. When we first opened in 2010, I believe in 2011, we actually purchased a car and we had a big giveaway citywide. And we ran the promotion for about 11 months with a local NBC affiliate. And I remember the response to it. I think there was like 55,000 entries. And, you know, this 24-year-old single mother of a little girl won the car, just like so happened to win it. And so it was such a cool marketing idea then that people through the years say, hey, you're that car wash that did that. You know, that gave that car away. They still remember it. And you're exactly right, Matt, because this has the same feeling to that. And the response, even from customers on Facebook, just, you know, and it's not a huge amount. It's not going to buy them a whole meal, but they'll thank you for one card. And so I think this will kind of have the same effect.
Yeah. And you were giving it to unlimited folks too, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. To everybody. Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. We have one more question that we missed. If an owner's purchasing equipment to make their business better equipped for such a situation, so let's say they're starting to kind of look forward, or they need different payment stations or something to help them with what they're doing, is there any relief in that regard? Is there can any of that money be used that we've been talking about on that front?
Yeah. I mean, yes. Because it's part of the whole funk, it's part of the whole package. You know, we're not talking about, I've always wanted to open a completely second business for XYZ. You're talking about maintaining your business now, getting what you need so you can function. So yes, it would be included.
Okay, that's perfect. That's what we wanted to make sure we knew. So, I want to just say thank you so much to the three of you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure having you guys on. I think it's a great resource for folks, and I hope that everybody viewing got a lot out of that. I'm going to wrap real quick for everybody so that we can show you guys a little bit of what we've got coming up next. So I want to make sure that you guys see this link here at the bottom of the page, carwash.org/sharing. The resources that we talked about on today's show are going to be there. And then a whole lot of really good nitty-gritty detail kind of stuff around all the things we talked about with CARES and Families First and everything kind of Corona related. So really good resource for you. The other thing I wanted to talk about for everybody is this. ICA did something called an industry pulse. So they did a supplier pulse survey, and they started with suppliers, and let me just get this link up for you guys here. They started with suppliers and got great responses from there. It's a kind of an overall view of like how business is going and what they're seeing and kind of what they're experiencing. And then they're going to also going to do an operator version of that. That's the same data. We're going to be doing it on a regular basis. So the link here, carwash.org/industry-pulse. You can see it on your screen. That is live. The supplier results are there. And then the operator survey link is there. So if you can, in the next couple of days, take the time to fill that survey out. A person from your company on behalf of you, that would be really helpful. And then next week on our show, we're gonna have folks on to talk about what's going on, what we're seeing in those supplier pulse survey results, to just give folks kind of an update on what we're seeing overall. So that's for next week. I just want to say again, thank you guys for joining me on Car Wash Magazine Live. If you want to be on the show, or you have ideas of stuff you want to hear about, resources you need, please let me know, mdewolf@carwash.org. I'm happy to have the conversation with you. Really looking forward to being able to connect you guys in this way. And, for me, it's an honor and a privilege to be able to help tell great stories for you guys. So on that note, we are going to end this program today. And as I have always said, when you're out there, keep it clean.